Christ himself gave us the Constitution. I believe that Article 5 issue really was in there was when he comes, he will have to modify the Constitution so that he will be Lord of Lords and King of Kings over the whole world. It's not an international document right now. It doesn't allow for the type of government he will bring, but the baseline principles will be modified to allow him to be Lord of Lords and King of Kings.
It's a Thought Police free zone. The Liberty Lineup radio show, where independent thought just can't be bought.
I'm an American. Red, white, and blue. And I'm a citizen of this world and of heaven. Some things were meant to be together. I believe in faith and freedom. Got a country too. I believe with faith and freedom, we're gonna make it through. Come on!
Welcome to the Thursday segment of the Liberty Lineup, the Naked Truth. Today we have our guests, Scott Bradley and Lavoy Finicum, who will be talking to us about Oregon and the Convention of States. And we will be here in a moment with Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore, your hosts.
We gotta rise up, we gotta stay strong, 'cause everything's on the line. We gotta rise up, we gotta stay strong, to save our way of life. I believe in faith and freedom.
We'd like to thank our show sponsor, EOS Mobile, the only cell phone service that gives you the peace of mind that your monthly bills are supporting only conservative candidates and causes of your choice, including this show. Call 877-367-7524. Be among the first 10 callers during this show today, and you'll get a special offer if you mention the Liberty Lineup radio show. Call now, 877-367-7524. That's 877-367-7524. Again, 877-367-7524. For more information, go to eoscell.com, eoscell.com. Okay, got a mic working. Go ahead and speak.
This is Ben McClintock.
There you go.
I am here. The man tried to keep me down, but I wouldn't let him keep me away from the station. And today we've got some hot topics with they haven't made it public yet, but they've announced that there's a Convention of States application that will be introduced into the state legislature this year. And so we want to talk to some experts. Well, the expert on this, Scott Bradley, To Preserve the Nation, the author of To Preserve the Nation. We have him on the air. We have him on the line with us. Scott, you there?
Well, I'm here. Are you there?
I am now.
Oh, great. I love it.
So they're going to have a new application for Convention of States, even though they did last year, right? They had one application that passed for an Article 5, and hopefully we'll have some good legislator propose a rescission of those calls this year. But now, so we're talking about something different.
Well, yeah, so you've got the Convention of States, which is like a regular Article 5 con call, but on steroids. And you've got all of the false conservatives supporting it. And then you've got Wolfpack, which is a liberal organization funded by George Soros, which is also backing a convention. And so they're working together to be able to destroy the Constitution. And so, Scott, you want to give us some more details about what's going on with that?
Well, it's a tragic scenario that we've got going right now, where I get so weary of people that we consider them our friends, and they give lip service to the idea that the They love liberty and proper government. They love the Constitution and everything like that. And yet and still, they support these kinds of things. And just for example, and we'll get into the Convention of the States and why it cannot happen and must not happen and isn't even constitutional. But let's just take, for example, our congressional delegation. They are largely supporting Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is publicly calling for a Constitution Convention. Our Senator, Mike Lee, has written a book about the Constitution, which he purports to show how great it is and everything like that, and then it's endorsed by all of the convention seekers. I don't know if birds of a feather flock together or what, but the fact is we have these things happen, and we're letting this slip through our fingers, these magnificent principles that were set forth under the inspiration of God, and that we have the privilege of restoring. In fact, one of the things that kind of really drives me crazy is I have listened to these people that are conventions of states or conference of states or Article 5 convention or whatever name they come up with. It's all an effort to change the Constitution. All of these people, when you boil out all of their arguments, every one of them, and you say, what does it really come down to? Their argument is, they're violating the Constitution, so we've got to change it. Well, never, ever, at any time did the Founding Fathers say if they violate the Constitution, change it. They didn't ever say amend it. They didn't say call a convention. They didn't say anything like that. The idea
Wait. You're telling me that if somebody is breaking the law, that if you make another law that says you can't break the other law, that now they're going to obey the first law?
Well, yeah, I guess that's what they're saying. But here's even worse. If you look at Mark Levin's Liberty Amendments, the great bulk of them make constitutional the things that they're doing unconstitutionally now.
Right.
We wouldn't have a leg to stand on.
So these proposed amendments actually give the government more power. They're not limiting power because they're legitimizing what they already can't do and making it so they can do it now.
Absolutely correct. I mean, these things that are given, Liberty Amendments, Mark Levin, he's in...
It's kind of like the Patriot Act, right? If you're against the Liberty Amendments, you're against liberty.
Well, exactly. So here's the deal. These people that claim to love the Constitution, and they say, well, they're co-opting so-called conservatives of a balanced budget amendment, and that's not going to balance the budget. I've looked at every single balanced budget amendment that's been proposed, and not a single one of them will balance the budget. But there are dozens.
Along those lines with the balanced budget amendment, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to kind of touch on that for a second, is if I remember correctly, it's about 49 of the 50 states have their own version of a balanced budget amendment in their own state constitutions. But of those 49 states, none of them have a balanced budget.
Well, it's because they take money from the feds. I mean, and so if you get a balanced budget amendment at the federal level, you've got anywhere between, I don't know, maybe the lowest is 15% or something like that, to nearly half. Every single state is feeding at the government trough. And you think the states are going to be excited about saying, oh, let's say our state, what is it, 30%, maybe something like that. Depends on which liar you listen to. But let's say our state is taking 25 to 30% of our total state budget from the federal government. You think our state is going to say, oh, no, we'll give up 25 or 30% of what our current state budget is in order to go along with this balanced budget amendment? No. What's going to happen? They're going to say, no, keep sending the money. So the feds are going to say, oh, we got to increase our taxes. And there's all sorts of loopholes that are in all of these balanced budget amendments that all allow that kind of stuff. But last legislative session, we had some of the most dangerous men in the nation, literally, in my opinion, that were promoting this. And it got through the Senate, got through Niederhauser's Senate, the president of the Senate, this effort to do a Constitution Convention because they want to do their little balanced budget thing. And I was in the hearings, and I believe you were too, wherein we listened to the chief promoters of this, Ken Ivory out of the House, and Niederhauser out of the Senate wasn't there, but of course he was the one moving behind the scenes. But it was so open-ended. It was so completely, and I had already testified, and so when Ken Ivory somebody said, wow, it's pretty open-ended, isn't it? What's going to control them from doing this? And Ken Ivory said they will have the limits upon them that they place upon themselves. That's not an exact quote. Now, let me just read you something, gentlemen. You need to understand something that was actually in the organization book of the German National Socialist Party, the Nazi Party, in 1940. Okay, so this is talking about limits of power and those that have attained it, and specifically talking about der Führer. Anyway, these limits of power, it says, is not limited by checks and controls, by special autonomous bodies or individual rights, but is free and independent, all-inclusive and unlimited. He is responsible only to his conscience and the people. Okay, so what Ken Ivory did is basically slightly modify the Nazi handbook from 1940 when he said these people that are going to run this convention will have the limits that they place upon themselves, just like the Fuhrer did. And we know how that
That's
ended
amazing.
up happily ever after for everybody in the world back in the 1940s.
That is so profound to explain what this is
because
really
like
all about.
last week we talked about how one of the legislators was literally copying word for word Karl Marx out of the Communist Manifesto of doing things piece by piece to give us Obamacare in the state of Utah, and now you've got Ken Ivory quoting basically the agenda of the Nazi Party,
the Nazi Manifesto, whatever that is.
Well, it was actually the title of the book is the Organization Book of the German National Socialist Party, and it's the 1940 edition.
Okay.
and so the limits on the convention are kind of like the limits placed upon them that they place upon themselves right now, which is none, right?
And the other thing is who's going to attend this. Now, again, we haven't even talked about the constitutionality of this thing. I don't know how much time we got, but you know me, you get me wound up and turn me loose. I mean, there's you got to kind of take what you get. But the fact of the matter is, these guys that are going to attend, guys and gals, I'm not going to put any gender limit on it because we have scoundrels of both genders that would be there.
And neither gender.
And, yeah, whatever. Everybody's confused nowadays. But at any rate, the fact of the matter is, every single one of them are those that are contributing to the problem right now, greater or lesser degree. You take Mike Lee and put him there, and everybody says, oh, my goodness, Mike Lee, he's from Utah. He's a wonderful constitutionalist. Well, you know what? Mike Lee's international agenda is absolutely globalist. If you look at the way he's running all of the things that he runs, whether it's a preemptive war that he co-sponsored the idea against Iran, whether it's the trade agreements that he's in favor of, I mean, and now the convention on the Constitution, I mean, he's always said he's against it, but he's for it.
And he's also supporting the idea and the structure of the count my vote. And so you go down the list, and he's really seeming to be a lot like Orrin Hatch was when he first came out.
But here's the deal, guys. If I put up, and I would do this if we were there, I mean, I'll show all your audience right now. Here's a picture of all the Founding Fathers. Okay. How many of them are going to be in this convention? Well, whatever you call it, a convention of the states, a Constitution convention, an Article 5 convention, a conference of states, whatever you call it, are any of these guys going to be there? The answer is no, unequivocally. Now, I could put up, I figured it out one time, over 3,000 montage pictures of 15 in each picture, of all the state legislators, all of the people that are currently in Congress, all the judges, all the recently retired, all those that are past members of Congress or whatever, executive, judicial, or legislative branches.
Sorry, Scott. Hold on real quick. Hold that thought. We're going to a break. We're right here with Scott Bradley, author of To Preserve the Nation, talking about the Con-Con and the lies of the Convention of States. We'll be right back. This is the Liberty Lineup with Enoch Moore and Ben McClintock on The Naked Truth. We'll be right back, and thank you our sponsors, EOS Mobile. This is Ben McClintock with Enoch Moore of DefendingUtah.org, and we are back on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, K-Talk.com with the Liberty Lineup, the Naked Truth segment, where we think right and wrong, right and wrong, not right and left. And we are sponsored by EOS Mobile, the only cell phone service supporting conservative causes of your choice. People are asking us how they can join our grassroots network To get our updates and alerts, just go to libertylineup.com. That's libertylineup.com and sign up. And if you like what you're hearing, you can support the cause of liberty with a donation of any amount. That's libertylineup.com. You can also like and share our Facebook page, The Liberty Lineup Radio Show. And if you're on Facebook, make sure and like the Liberty Lineup Radio Show. That way you'll get updated on what's the next show going to be about, who's our guest going to be, and you can really be just kept up to date on what we're working on and who the hot guests are going to be. Because today we have got a really hot guest. We've got two. Right now we are speaking with Scott Bradley, constitutional scholar and author of To Preserve the Nation. And then at the 11 o'clock hour, we've got Lavoy Finicum to give us an update of what's really going on up there in Oregon. Kind of give us some truth of what's going on, because we know we're not going to get the truth from the mainstream media. But right now we've got Scott Bradley. Scott, you still there with us, right?
I'm still here, hanging on. In fact, I'm still holding my breath.
I
hold that thought.
Sorry about that. Those breaks come on real quick, but
they do, and you got to take them. They're hard breaks.
We're talking about the Convention of States, the Article 5 Convention, the Constitutional Convention. That's something we need to. And this is something that we see in every aspect of what the enemies of liberty are doing. When they get busted, when we are really effective at exposing what they do, they change the name of what they're doing. And so, of course, it started off with the Constitutional Convention, then it went to the Convention it went to Convention of States. Now it's they just change the name all the time, and so it's something that we need to recognize. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And so
that's absolutely true. And the fact of the matter is, that anything they call it, they're trying to change the Constitution.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. One time I was back in Missouri. I was at one of the Liberty events that happens around the country. I like to go out and do what I can to promote that kind of stuff. And I had my little booth out in the foyer, and it's a pretty humble little booth, I mean, it's not like I got $1 bazillion to bring to anything, but the guy from the lead guy from the Tea Party Patriots came, and he says, "So you're against the convention?" I says, "Yeah, I absolutely am." And he says, "Why?" I says, "Because they're too dangerous." "Why?" He says, I'm comfortable with them now. Now, by the way, this fellow, it became known to me in our conversation that he was an LDS fellow, so he's similar to many of your listeners, I'm sure. And, of course, this idea of the elders will step forward and save the Constitution, all this kind of stuff is always in the foremost of their mind. My thought is always, if you're going to save it, why don't you get busy at it? If you're going to change it, that's not saving it.
Right.
The 98 section says, whatsoever is more or less than this cometh of evil. Well, if you change it, is it more or less? And the answer is yes. But
Right.
The fact of the matter is, this guy's kind of berating me, standing there belittling me. He's quite well-to-do financially and all this. And he was, I guess I wasn't quite his economic equal. But anyway, he says, well, it's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. I says, well, think of the people that are going to be there. He says, well, aren't you going to be there? And I says, absolutely not. First of all, I'm going to go to the death defending the Constitution we've got. And second of all, I'd never get an invitation because these people want to change that magnificent document. And they're not going to ask me to come. I've been to these kinds of conventions before, and I have stood up in opposition to what their intended purpose was. In fact, in one place I was in, this was back in 2009, there was probably about 3 per state, so there's 150 people there probably. And I stood up at the beginning of the meeting, and basically if my position had prevailed, they would have closed down their whole purpose for meeting. Well, we had a big debate over it, and I lost on a 60-40 vote. But I got 40% of the people to recognize what we were doing didn't fit the formula. But at any rate, the point of the matter is that this guy's running me down. Well, you're going to be there, aren't you? You love the Constitution. I said, no, they're not going to invite me. I would be outside trying to petition people to try and close it out, whatever.
Exactly.
And he says, God raised up people, back in 1787 to do this, and he'll raise them up again. And I'm going, what are you talking about, man? Look what he gave us. If you believe that, he gave us this. Look what we've done to it. And you're saying we're going to now change it, and it's going to be better than what he gave us, and he's going to raise up people to. And the discussion went nowhere, literally. But the fact of the matter is, people need to realize that the people that are going to attend are the people that are causing our troubles now. Not a one of them that I am aware of. I guess I could always qualify it that way, because there may be somebody out there that has an understanding of the limits and bounds, the checks and balances, the separation of powers, all of those things, delegation, and all that kind of stuff that goes with our Constitution. There may be somebody out there that holds office that understands that, but I'm unaware of them. And it's a fatal flaw. And when we send these people out, we are going to get what we've got right now. And like I said, with the Levin amendments, the proposed ones, there's, I think, 11 or 12 of those. I've done it.
Well, that's something I think we can break this down to is several different segments. We can say that, of course, you've got the dangers involved of the people. We've got our state legislature is one of the most conservative in the country, and they're passing, supposedly. And they're going to be the minority voice. They're going to be, if they're the most conservative, and they're the ones passing all of these tax increases and increases in government. What's going to come out of that if we're the conservative voice? Heaven forbid. And
gentlemen, let me just point out something to you.
Yeah.
The thing that they passed in this last legislative session that said we're calling for a convention. We're going to put our name on the application to do so, to call a convention, whatever they're going to call it, like Article 5 requires. Utah's on that list now. Okay. And then they said, we're going to put a safety valve in. We're going to say that if they get to the convention and they decide to do more than we wanted them to do, we're going to call our people home. And it's like, really? So you're going to leave the voice of the state completely out of anything that they're going to try and screw up.
Right.
And the other thing is, can you call them home anyway? In the first convention, 1787, Delaware had strict instructions. If they tried to do anything other than amend the current Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, Delaware was to pull up stakes, pack their bags, and come home. Well, what happened? Delaware stayed to the end, fortunately, and I'm glad they did because they were honorable men and everything like that. I don't know as we could say we can put a finger at any of the people that might go there now, but Delaware stayed. They signed the new Constitution. So, and then we could get into this idea of who has the power to call. Who has the power to call a convention? Who has the power to cut the rules of engagement?
Right.
And all of these people that are promoting this are giving a falsehood to the people. The people don't understand who will really call. The people don't understand who will really write the rules of engagement. The people don't really understand. Congress has looked at this. Congress has proposed solutions in front of them right now. It will not be the states calling themselves together. By the way, that violates Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, if they were to do that. But Congress has the authority, once it calls a convention, to set all the rules of engagement. And Congress recognizes that. And this idea of one state, one vote that they're promoting, how idiotic is that? California has over 38 million people. Wyoming has under 600,000. You say, wow, so Feinstein and Jerry Brown and all their friends out there in California are going to say, wow, I think California citizens ought to have 1/63rd the power per person that each Wyoming person does.
Right.
Do the math.
Right.
They're not going to put up with it. And the Congress has proposals before it to bring a convention together that's set up largely along the lines of the Electoral College. Who won the Electoral College the last couple of presidential elections? My gracious. And the idea is even probably worse than that because they're worried that the Electoral College skews the power a little bit in favor of the small states like Utah and Wyoming and South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho, those kind of the states that seem to have some common sense, but not completely. But the fact of the matter is they're thinking of modifying the Electoral College formula. And you can go look at the Congressional Research Service papers that have been written on this back in July of 2012 and April of 2014. These are public knowledge. People can get these. But the lies that are told to try and get everybody to
Right.
turn this magnificent Constitution over to the scoundrels that are currently just dissecting it, cutting it, slicing it, dicing it, and ignoring it. And we're going to turn this over to them, and then Bradley, you got to quit worrying so much. I mean,
Right.
We still got we got 3/4 of the states that got to ratify whatever they're due. Oh, how so? The original Articles of Confederation required any changes
Well,
to be made to that Constitution to have 100% of the states in agreement.
Right. They
The
changed.
founding
They changed the
fathers
rules.
knew that they weren't going to get that, so they made it 9 out of 13. But they could make it a text message poll. They could make it a majority of Congress or 26 states, or they could do whatever they wanted.
Even if they kept the rules the same, do we trust these guys to?
Well, not with the knowledge base that's out there.
Not with and their record. You look at the each state's record of preserving liberty and expanding liberty or expanding government. Kind of compare and contrast, and they've got a horrible record. So, so Article 5. The convention that they want to do to add amendments to blame the victim for being violated, which is really what they're doing. When is a convention a reasonable idea? When would you support a convention?
Well, I'll give you my honest opinion. And people that I've given this to, a lot of them, they just smirk and scoff and mock and everything else like that. But I'll tell you why I think that's in there. And I've explained this to people that are not members of the LDS faith, and they seem to get it better than the people that are members of the LDS faith. But if you're a member of the LDS faith, you have a lot more legs to stand on than
Right.
But anyway, if I just go to the 5th chapter of Matthew and explain to them how Christ, he's there preaching to the people. He came not to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. Okay? Now, is my personal opinion, and if you're LDS, I think I can prove that to you. If you believe the words of the prophets that you sustained and so on, if you can believe your scriptures, Christ himself gave us the Constitution. And what I believe that Article 5 issue really was in there for was when he comes, he will have to modify the Constitution so that he will be Lord of Lords and King of Kings over the whole world. It's not an international document right now. It doesn't allow for the type of government he will bring, but the baseline principles will be modified to allow him to be Lord of Lords and King of Kings. At that point, I will support a convention. Now, everybody else is saying, oh, no, but they're violating it. And I'm saying, okay, let's go back to it.
Right.
We, the people, need to understand what they're doing wrong. I mean, whether it's spending money that they have no authority to do, whether it's doing Second Amendment things that the president, first of all, executive orders have no value in terms of making law, because all legislative authority is given to the legislature, the House and the Senate. There is no constitutional way to delegate that authority to a president, to an international body, through a treaty, to anything that's happening now through the executive, the ATFE, the IRS, the OSHA, or whoever. There is no authority for the legislature to delegate their legislative authority to create law that the people will be bound by. It can only be exercised by them. All of those things aside, if that's happening, the solution is not to change the Constitution to allow it to happen, as Levin would have us do, and many of these others, but to rein them in, to say, I mean, this idea, this Republican idea that we have right now, for example, of we've got to repeal Obamacare and replace it. Huh? You get their Constitution out and carefully read it. Read every word, ponder them, pray about them for days. You will never find an authority for the national government to be involved in medical care.
Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution lays out specifically what they're allowed to do. And the 10th Amendment says if we didn't give you the authority to do it, you can't do it.
That's right. And you know what? Almost invariably, the people that call in, there may be people who want to call in right now that can say, let's look at the welfare clause. Well, if you look at the definition of the welfare clause, the way the founders used it, out of the 1812 Noah Webster Dictionary, the way that James Madison explained it on the floor of the House in February of 1792, you will see that the welfare clause has nothing whatsoever to do with the dole.
Well, otherwise, it would give the government unlimited power. We're off to a break. We're talking with Scott Bradley, constitutional scholar, author of To Preserve the Nation. I am Ben McClintock with
Enoch Moore
of the Liberty Lineup, Naked Truth segment, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. And we will be right back after the break talking about Well, if Article 5 isn't the solution, then what is? And
well, I can tell you that, too.
right when we get back from the break. Hold on real quick. And we'll be talking about what can be done and what can we do right now. Do we have to go through this process? What are the lies that are being told by the Convention of States? And if they're telling lies, does that mean that their agenda is pure? And the fact that that you've got both George Soros, Wolfpack, supporting a convention, as well as false conservatives that are promoting the replacement of Obamacare with some kind of Republican version of government-managed health care, that tells us a whole lot of who's really supporting this convention, and are they really about preserving liberty, or are they more about blaming the victim for being violated? Right back on the Liberty Lineup with Scott Bradley. Hey, we are back. This is Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore with DefendingUtah.org on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, K-Talk.com, with the Liberty Lineup Naked Truth segment where we think right and wrong, not right and left. Sponsored by EOS Mobile, the only cell phone service supporting conservative causes of your choice. Join our grassroots network to get our updates and alerts. Just go to LibertyLineup.com, that's LibertyLineup.com, and sign up. And if you like what you're hearing, support Liberty Lineup with a donation of any amount. That's LibertyLineup.com. You can also like and share our Facebook page, the Liberty Lineup Radio Show. Liking our Facebook page, that'll really help you be kept up to date of who the hosts are going to be, the guests are going to be, what the shows are going to be about in the coming days. And we are joined today with constitutional scholar Scott Bradley, author of To Preserve the Nation, talking about the Convention of States, the Constitutional Convention, Article 5 Convention, been called a bunch of different things. And we wanted to get into the deception that they're trying to pull over. And again, we have to ask ourselves if they're having to use deception, is what they're doing on the up and up. And I think that's pretty clear. And so some of the things that I wanted to bring up about their deception are some of the ideas that they're promoting, Scott. And there's some of their talking points going around that really contradict each other. They've got this one meme that they are passing around how it's limited to a single amendment, right? But then the Liberty Amendments is actually multiple amendments. They've got another meme where they're talking about repealing the 17th, which would be great, and term limits and a balanced budget. And so they're speaking out of both sides of their mouths when they say that it's limited, when they themselves are promoting more than one amendment to go through the convention.
Well, you're absolutely correct. I mean, if you look at the dozens, I mean, I've tracked, I don't remember the number right now because I quit tracking them. I got so many, something like 53 proposed amendments I was tracking, and there's some variation of each other sometimes and everything, but honestly, every single group has their own agenda. Some are trying to even amend the Constitution to get rid of this thing, Citizens United or something. I don't know.
Right, that's the Wolfpack one.
Yeah, they're looking for their own they want to pull the lever of government on behalf of their own little agenda. But even some of these that claim to be like the spokesman for the whole organization, they have literally dozens of proposed amendments. Now, this could go a lot of different ways. One, they may pull off one Constitution convention of some sort or another, whatever name, and they may limit it. They may say among themselves behind closed doors, hey, let's do one, make it squeaky clean, and then it'll be okay. Because Ken Ivory and others have previously sought to put together a constantly sitting Constitution convention that would basically evaluate, they'd vet every single proposed. Now, this has never made it through our legislature, by the way, and it actually got pulled at the end of one legislative session about 3 years ago, if I recall correctly. But so they may pull off one squeaky clean and get a balanced budget amendment. They won't balance the budget, by the way, but they may do all that. And they'll say, hey, wait a minute, guys. These guys like Bradley were just worrywart, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Let's do another one, and another one, and another one. And what you're going to find is that they can pull out a Gramscian effect, where they do a slice at a time on the bread or the bologna, and until they get the whole loaf. Okay. Right. Well, then, and the other thing that might happen is they may stay. I mean, they get some elder statesman that stands up in front of the group, a governor previously from Florida, Georgia, California, or someplace, and says, ladies and gentlemen, we're met in this august body, and it's such an honor to be able to address some of the horrific problems our nation has faced over the last more than 200 years. It would be a crime of immense proportion if we didn't take advantage of this opportunity. I move that the rules be set aside and we open it up for discussion of any amendment that might be necessary. Here, call the question. Okay, now we got an open convention.
Right. Well, and I think of that part of it, of them trying to maybe make it squeaky clean, is why we need to focus more on the proper diagnosis. We need to ask ourselves. It seems to me that the Founding Fathers gave us two solutions for fixing situations, and so we need to figure out what the proper diagnosis is. Now, Article 5 would, to me, be saying, okay, the Constitution's being followed, but we still have some issues that need to be solved. We're following it perfectly. We're not violating it at all, but there's a problem that came up and we can't fix it. Is that the diagnosis that we can find ourselves in today? Are they following the Constitution right now? I think the answer
is no.
Is clearly no. And so the Founding Fathers gave us something else to be able to address it when they aren't following the Constitution, because when you're not following something and adding new lines to something you're not following, that doesn't make any sense. So they weren't dumb. So they gave us something else, and that seems to me to be the 10th Amendment, having the states actually enforce the Constitution. And in fact, one of the Liberty Amendments, the so-called anti-Liberty Amendments is what they really are, actually would repeal the 10th Amendment, because what it would say is for the states to go around an illegal federal action, they would actually have to get a majority of the states to agree with them, which they don't have to do right now.
You're absolutely correct. And the fact of the matter is, people need to understand that, if the power was not delegated, it's not there for the national government. The national government cannot usurp to itself. It cannot interpret. It cannot do anything. It is the creature of the contract of the United States Constitution. The creators of the contract, or the parties to the contract, are the states. And the states, now, Jefferson and Madison spoke very clearly about this. And by the way, we could talk about Madison's writings about nullification in 1834 to explain away one of the lies that these people are telling you about nullification. But let's first talk about the fact they were completely in agreement that the national government, the federal government, is a creature created by the contract. It has only those powers delegated to it and none else. And if it begins to usurp powers, it is the responsibility of the creators or the parties of the contract to re-engage and reassert themselves and call it back into order. And this is something the people that are for the CONCON are absolutely terrified of, because it allows the national government to rein in on a kind of a straight laser shot kind of thing, instead of opening it up for them to do whatever they want with their 12 amendments here, 10 amendments there, 3 amendments there, that they're all going to propose. But there's a couple of things that need to be understood. One is, if the national government is abusing a delegated power, Jefferson says plainly that the constitutional solution to that is the ballot box. If they have a power, it's delegated, it's abused, we need to solve that in the ballot box. And by the way, an example of that, why Madison opposed South Carolina's efforts against the tariffs that they were angry about back in the late 1820s and early 1830s, was that the power to set tariffs was delegated to the national government. They may have been horrific, abominable, and everything else that they called them, but that was a delegated power, and it needed to be corrected in the ballot box. However, Jefferson also said, if they usurp a power not granted, then it becomes the responsibility of the states to reassert themselves and call them back into order. Because if the federal government becomes the judge of its own limits and bounds,
right,
think where that's going to go, my friends.
We've got a texter that has a question for you. Do you know which presidential candidates are supporting a convention?
I don't know all, and I don't know if it's even been a discussion point. I do know that Rubio has publicly stated that, and by the way, as I said in the beginning of our program, that our congressional delegation from Utah has largely said, oh, we want Rubio. My opinion, if he had no other flaws, and believe me, there are plenty, but if he had no other flaws, this single fatal flaw would be a reason to not support him. But
I know Rubio and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul are kind of the three major ones that I've heard that are supporting a convention openly.
Okay, well, I think those are all fatal flaws. I mean, it's kind of like these people that claim to be pro-life, and yet they're belligerent warmongers.
Right.
I mean, are we only worried about life until the baby's here?
Right.
Or are we worried about life after it's here, too? And if you're pro-life, you're pro-life, and the war-making powers are very limited, too, and that's maybe another subject for another day. But the fact of the matter is, these people that claim to be great constitutionalists and love the Constitution, and this is almost without exception, the kind of people we run into, the Mark Levins and the Ken Ivories and so on, that just are almost blubbering in their crocodile tears about how much they love the Constitution, but because it's being violated, we need to change it. And it's like, nowhere did the Founding Fathers say that.
That's just the most moronic logic I've ever heard in my life. Let's go back to the convention itself. Back in January, they held a mock convention to decide the rules that the convention would be governed by. And
no, that was not January. I mean, that was a month or so ago.
I'm sorry, not January. That was like in November, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
Recently.
It was just a couple of months ago, and then which is kind of funny because in an interview I did afterwards, they admitted that this whole thing was just a show to make people feel comfortable with a convention. But we've got some clips I think that Enoch wants to share. Can I introduce some of those, Enoch?
So, yeah, we're going to see if these clips will play because we've had an alternative way to get
technical issues, and hopefully it'll work.
But this is on day 3. So we've been talking about the solution that is the states enforce, right? We just went through that and covered it. And there was a part during this convention where they were discussing how do we make the federal government obey our new rules. And what they actually came up with is giving states the authority to enforce. And so it was so ironic that they just came to the solution that already exists right now, and they're saying that's the solution they're going to need when they don't listen to their new amendments. But let's see if we can get these clips to play here. This one.
It's not coming. We're not seeing anything. Sorry, maybe you should play that again because I couldn't tell if it was playing over the air. Or maybe we can just kind of do a synopsis, and we're putting together a report on what happened.
We'll give it another try.
Okay, one more try. Some of the reports, some of the proceedings from a recent meeting at the legislature discussing the rules for a convention. And that's...
When we're at a convention, the questions may arise when, as a proposal is being examined, and we'll stay with the balanced budget proposal of, yes, we're going to require a balanced budget, and we're going to alter in some way. We're going to give states some type of an authority to enforce the balanced budget requirement.
So they're saying right there, we're going to have to give the states some kind of authority to enforce these new rules that we're making. Specifically, he said balanced budget there, but we have that already.
Right.
That's what we have right now is they have authority. So anything you do is either going to do what we already have or mess it up.
Yep.
It's a natural law. It came from God.
It's
the right of the people to alter or abolish, and we have that right through our constitutional means right now.
Yep.
So it's interesting to me, a lot of people say, oh, man, we've got more Republican state legislatures now. This is the time to do it. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. You're going to have your opposition sitting in that meeting. And whatever you're thinking you're going to do is going to have another counterpoint. And, in fact, if you think back about this mock convention... Scott,
I'm sorry. I got to cut you off. We're off to a break. But Scott Bradley, author of To Preserve the Nation. Scott, what do you have a website you want everybody to go to?
Well, I've got several videos up right now on freedomsrisingsun.com. Freedoms Rising Sun, no apostrophe, but freedomsrisingsun.com, and you can watch me present.
freedomsrisingsun.com. Thanks to our sponsor, sorry, Scott, EOS Mobile, where monthly bill goes to support this show and only conservative candidates of your choice. Go to EOSCELL.com and mention the Liberty Lineup Radio Show. This is Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore of DefendingUtah.org. We'll be right back with Lavoy Finicum telling us an update of what's going on up in Oregon.